What is going on, college basketball fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Danny Hoops podcast. This is where Danny, talk all things college basketball each and every Thursday morning, and we take your guys' questions at the end. And we actually got a lot of questions this week, so I appreciate it. We couldn't get to them all, but make sure you guys, if you guys want your question in the next episode of the podcast, we always do those, like I said, at the end of the video. Make sure you guys look for my community post on Wednesday. Anytime Wednesday, get them in there because we record Wednesday nights. So we got a good slate of topics to talk about here today. We are going to talk about some of the best games and storylines that went on this week so far. Then we actually have a good amount of news to talk about in today's podcast. Usually we haven't been getting, too much news in the world of college basketball, but lately, a little bit of drama heating up. So we have that to talk about. And kind of my main topic for today's podcast, we are going to go over pretty much most of the teams around the bubble, hanging on, barely in the tournament, barely out of the tournament, maybe just a little bit more than barely out of the tournament. And I'm going to let you know where I think they stand now as a team as far as in the field. And if I think by the time Selection Sunday comes, they will make it in. So we will be making a bubble team prediction for these teams. And I have literally like almost 20 teams to talk about, where I will either let you guys know if I think they are going to make the tournament or miss the tournament. And then of course, at the end, we will do my top 5 player of the year candidates for the week and my top 3 national championship contenders for the week. And then after that, we will round it off with some of your guys' questions. So before we get it started, I just want to say subscribe if you guys are new. We have daily college basketball content dropping here on the channel. And if you guys are watching this on Thursday, the day it is posted, we will be live streaming Thursday night, probably at 9 p.m. So 9 p.m., come tune in to the live stream where we will be watching probably Gonzaga in San Francisco or whatever the best game is on here Thursday night. So let's get it started by talking about some of the big games and big storylines that happened so far this week of college basketball. So to start us off, I think the biggest storyline here that happened, at least today, was Vanderbilt upsetting Tennessee on a buzzer beater shot, a 3 from the corner to get it done. And Tennessee is a team, they've been struggling as of late, barely pulling off the win over Auburn, just not looking the best this past week, and last week losing to Florida. And I honestly don't think Florida is that good either. And Vanderbilt's definitely not that good. Losing to those teams is not a good look. And I think the Tennessee fraudineers, you could call them, are frauds once again. And I really don't see them getting anywhere past the Sweet 16 this March Madness. And they're proving me right so far. Proving me right. We'll see how they do, the rest of the season. They still have big matchups with teams like Alabama, and then, of course, the SEC tournament. So we will get to see a lot more of Tennessee before we get to March Madness. But I personally believe that they are frauds once again. Also, UConn beating up on Marquette. This is, kind of looking like the team we saw in this UConn team at the beginning of the year, where we said this team looks like it could win the championship this year. And they were kind of looking like on par with that team we saw early on. Big win over Marquette. Right out the gates was up by 15, 20 points, never looked back. And Marquette is a really solid team. I know that game came at home. We'll get to see more as UConn faces Creighton on Saturday. Big matchup. And that one's on the road for UConn. If they can go into Creighton in Omaha and win that game, that is going to be huge, and I will be right back on the UConn train as far as them winning the championship. Also, my favorite team gets a headline here today because West Virginia knocks off number 11 Iowa State. And this was an ugly game filled with fouls. And I don't want to get too much started on this because I could rant probably for this entire podcast about how bad Big 12 refs are. Especially this year. The Big 12 refs, they call everything, especially towards the end of the game. They try to dictate the game themselves, and I can't stand it. West Virginia was in the bonus with, I think, 15 or 14 minutes left in the second half, which just causes the game to be stretched out so long. Every single little tic-tacky foul they call, and every single tic-tacky foul will send the other team to the free throw line for at least 1-1. And I just hate that. I think it's ruining the game of college basketball. I think the NIL, the transfer portal, I don't think it's hurting college basketball as much as it is college football. That's a discussion for another day. I think it's actually, I think there's a lot of parity in college basketball right now, which there usually is. But I think the main thing that's ruining college basketball is the reffing. I love college basketball, but late game stoppage, slowing the game down, calling all these tic-tacky fouls. Like, the reason we want to watch college basketball is because they can get a little bit physical. They can play hard for their schools. Like, this is what we want to see. This is what everybody watching college basketball wants to see. So, in my opinion, it's not NIL, it's not the transfer portal. It is the referees that are ruining the college basketball sport right now. I still love it. I'm still going to be watching it, of course. But, if I could change anything about college basketball, it would be the reffing. Just an ugly game between West Virginia and Iowa State. And I wouldn't say, I would probably say, even as a West Virginia fan, we were getting a lot of calls, but Iowa State seemed to be getting a lot of calls as well. It just, I didn't like, I don't like how many Big 12 games are refed this way. And I really hope that it stops soon because it's really bad. But I don't want to get too much in depth with that because, like I said, I could rant for a long time about that. Going on, but we will move on. Also, earlier this week, Miami, with a massive win over Duke, beat the Blue Devils by over 20 points at home. Miami looks like maybe, them or Virginia have the best chance to make a run out of the ACC, in my opinion. They have a really well-rounded team this year. I really like Miami and what they're doing right now. Also, North Carolina, we'll get more into them when we get to the news section of this podcast, but North Carolina loses on the road to Wake Forest, and they're on a little bit of a losing streak as of late. Wake Forest lost to Duke. It's not looking good for the Tar Heels. Also lost to Pitt, got swept by Pitt this year. That is not a good look. And it's looking like North Carolina is on the bubble, on the cusp of missing out on the tournament right now. And when we get to talking about whether I think all these bubble teams will make or miss the tournament later on in this podcast, North Carolina is going to be one of those teams that I believe is on the bubble. Also, Texas, probably biggest game of the week so far between Texas and Kansas. Kansas handles business at home in Fall Gallon and defeats Texas. Really good game, but Kansas looked like the better team out there. So we'll see if maybe Kansas can capture the number one spot in the Big 12 by the end of the year. I think Texas still holds that position right now. So now heading into the news portion of this podcast, I have three big storylines I want to talk about that happened this week. The big one coming from Syracuse University and Jim Boeheim. I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard about this going on, but Jim Boeheim basically said, and I will be paraphrasing, this is not word for word, but basically said he is tired of he said that all these ACC teams are buying their players. He did say that word, buying. uh, referring to pretty much everyone in the ACC except for Syracuse. And he also said the portal and the NIL are ruining the sport. So, I believed he was saying this whenever he was asked a question about whether or not he will be coaching more years. Correct me if I'm wrong for sure on that one. And he did later on, a few days after this came out and apologized for what he said. Um, but I do believe, let me know what you guys think. Should Jim Boheim retire? Is the modern day age basketball, just like, can he keep up with it? Because in this age, you have to be able to have the NIL and be able to get guys out of the transfer portal. We've seen, older coaches, including the coach from my team, Bob Huggins, Tom Izzo, go into the transfer portal, go into NIL. It's just something you have to adapt to as an older coach. And if Jim Boheim can't adapt, I don't believe he should be the coach of Syracuse, because I know that the Syracuse basketball program has the money and has the boosters to be able to put the NIL out there for some of these players to go out and get, especially for a really legendary coach like Jim Boheim. And he's not using that to his benefit, because I believe that Syracuse should be a team that should benefit a lot from NIL, considering they have a Hall of Fame coach, a guy who has won a national championship with a former top recruit in Carmelo Anthony. I believe he could get some of these top recruits to come to Syracuse with some NIL money and build, a potential championship level roster through recruiting and the transfer portal. But he refuses to utilize those tools, and I believe that is the reason Syracuse is behind this year and won't make the NCAA tournament. So that's my little spiel on that. I do believe Jim Boheim is an excellent coach, but I've been seeing a lot of hate going on about him, in particularly with Syracuse fans. So if there are any Syracuse fans out there watching my podcast or listening to it, let me know in the comment section. Do you guys want to see Jim Boheim continue to coach if he's not willing to utilize the transfer portal and the NIL deals? And for the non-Syracuse fans, I want to hear your guys' opinion as well. Other news, we do have I don't see too many people talking about this. I saw this about an hour or two before recording this podcast, but Sky Clark, I don't know if you guys remember, but a few podcasts ago, we did mention that he did enter the transfer portal. And today, I believe that he did, say he wanted to step away from the game of basketball and focus on, I believe it was his mental health or something with his family. So I really do hope that everything's good and okay there with Sky Clark. Completely understandable. That definitely comes before basketball. But he did post a video on Twitter, with some highlights from practice at Illinois. Highlights, dunking on a lot of his teammates or former teammates. And I don't know. In the comment section of this video, compilation of his highlights in practice, it was pretty much all Illinois fans saying, get well soon, or hope you're okay, or please come back. We need you. Come back. So I don't know if he is going to come back to Illinois, because whenever the first reaction I had, maybe this is wrong, but the first reaction I had when I saw that video, I was like, I don't think he's going back to Illinois, posting highlights, and not like just any sort of highlights, like dunking on your former teammates and stuff like that. Like, and the caption to this was lost files. So that kind of gave me the vibe, like maybe, he just didn't like maybe Brad Underwood or someone in the Illinois program, and this is kind of some shade thrown towards them. And I think he's going to go somewhere else next year and play college basketball. I don't think he will be returning to the Illini. But let me know if you guys kind of get that vibe. The caption was "Lost Files," and practice highlights dunking, breaking ankles of his former teammates in practice. Let me know what you guys think about that. Very interested to see where Sky Clark will go, or maybe he will return to the Illini next season. Other big news, and this is kind of the biggest one. Shout out to one of my subscribers, Jayhawk fan. He actually did send me this video on Twitter, and a video kind of explaining this situation. But apparently, allegedly, this is not confirmed, but there's a big rumor going around that Caleb Love actually slept, or I want to say that, hooked up with RJ Davis, is a girlfriend at the time. I'm assuming maybe ex-girlfriend now, and it has caused a lot of beef going on in the North Carolina locker room. And apparently they didn't want to sit by each other in class anymore. RJ Davis kind of keeping his distance from him, and that could be translating to the court, as North Carolina has been struggling. This is all, allegedly happening, so I'm not going to talk about this too much, but it is something I wanted to bring up with North Carolina's recent struggles. And yeah, so I wanted to bring that up and talk about it a little bit. Again, shout out to Jayhawk fan for letting me know this information, and there was some evidence in that video, going on. So I personally believe this is probably true. I'm probably about 75% sure, because I don't want to say 100%, but so that, yeah, that's going on. But yeah, that does it for the news portion of this podcast. I do want to mention real quick, Creighton versus UConn this Saturday, big matchup. Both teams are super hot right now. Creighton just got a win today over a very good Seton Hall team, and that sets up, in UConn, a good, again, we talked about earlier, big win over Marquette, dominating that matchup. These are two teams that at the beginning of the year, before Big East play started, we were saying, man, these two teams in the Big East, cannot wait for these two teams to match up, and because they both have potential to go super far in the March Madness tournament, but they both have had their struggles in the season and are both turning up again right now. So they're both turning up at the right time to meet each other. This game is being played in Omaha, home game for Creighton. And let me know your guys' predictions for this game. I'm super hyped for it. I have no idea who's going to win, but I believe this is going to be the game of the week. So let's move on to the next portion of our podcast, where we will be talking about the bubble watch teams, who is on the bubble, who is in the tournament, who is out of the tournament at this point. Not only will I be telling you guys if I think they are in or out at this point, but I will be making my prediction for if they will be in or will be out on Selection Sunday. And then after, of course, top 5 players of the year candidates and top 3 national championship contenders. And then we will get into your guys' questions. So again, make sure you guys subscribe if you guys are new. We just hit 2.2 thousand subscribers earlier this week, so I appreciate you guys for that. Also, follow me on the Twitter. Always active on the Twitter, and yeah, would love I have a follow all my subscribers back on there, and it's a good way to communicate with me and talk some college hoops. So let's get into the bubble watch predictions. First team, we might as well start with Danny's team, West Virginia. Big win over Iowa State tonight. They have won 5 of their last 7 games, and this was their 6th quad 1 win on the year. I personally believe that this win puts West Virginia in the tournament, and I think West Virginia will make the tournament on Selection Sunday. Next few games, they have Texas on the road and Baylor on the road. But then after that, Texas Tech and Oklahoma State at home. If you can beat Texas Tech and Oklahoma State, both home games, those are two games you have to win to get into the tournament. I believe West Virginia will get those wins and will make the March Madness tournament this year. Staying in the Big 12, we do have Oklahoma State. Now, Oklahoma State, I am actually going to say right now, I believe Oklahoma State should be in the tournament. I don't know if they quite are. I think they're very close to the bubble at this point. I believe Oklahoma State at this point should be in. But by the end of the year, I think my prediction, I'm going to say that the Pokes will miss the tournament. I think that they are going to lose at West Virginia, which is going to be a key game for both of these teams. I think they're going to struggle at this late part of the Big 12, and I think they could potentially and probably will lose in the first round of the Big 12 tournament. So I am going to say that the Pokes miss the March Madness tournament this year, and that the Big 12 gets 7 teams in. That includes Kansas, Texas, TCU, Baylor, Iowa State, Kansas State, and West Virginia. So, Oklahoma State, I'm going to have to say no, but as of right now, I say that they are barely in, probably last 4 in at this point. Next team we have to talk about moving to the ACC, we do have the Pitt Panthers. And I believe at this point, Pitt is actually probably just on the outside. But I do believe that Pitt will get into the tournament. I think that one Florida State loss really hurts them, honestly. I mean, if they didn't lose to Florida State, I think that they should be well in the tournament right now. But that loss actually really hurts. But I think that they've been playing really well in the ACC as of late, and that I think they will. By the time we get to Selection Sunday, I'm going to say that Pitt is in the NCAA tournament. I would love, personally, to see an 8-9 matchup between West Virginia and Pitt. We did see the backyard brawl earlier this year where West Virginia won that game on the road in the Oakland Zoo by 26 points, but I would love to see a rematch in the first round of the tournament. Backyard brawl is always fun, so I would love to see that. Next team, we do have North Carolina. I already mentioned them a few times in this podcast with all the drama going on there. And North Carolina, do I think that they can still make the tournament? Right now, I believe they are on the bubble and maybe even just on the outside. I mean, they've been losing games to teams like Wake Forest, who we're going to get to in a second, who is also a bubble team. And that was a win that North Carolina needed, and they lost to Duke before that. They're not playing good. They have, I think they're like 15-9 or 15-10. Like, they have quite a few losses, but I will say, I do think North Carolina is going to get into the tournament. I think some, bias from last season by the committee will, in fact, help them make March Madness this year. I think they know last year the 4 starters are returning from a team that made the national championship game last season and, was close in that game. And I personally believe, that is going to help them, whether you like it or not, get North Carolina into the tournament, even if it is as an 11 seed. So I think North Carolina, I'm going to make a prediction and say the committee is going to be biased. And I think they're going to put North Carolina in the March Madness tournament this year. Also, real quick, before we get back into the podcast, I want to mention, as I'm recording this on Wednesday night, Kevin Durant has just gotten traded to the Phoenix Suns. We saw a couple of days ago, Kyrie Irving got traded from the Nets to the Mavericks. The Suns now acquiring Kevin Durant. So not sure how many of you guys are out there watch the NBA. I personally don't even watch the NBA like that, but a crazy trade. So you guys are getting my initial reaction to that right now. So very crazy. That makes the Suns, look pretty good. But back to college basketball, because we all know college basketball is better than the NBA. Next team, we do have Wake Forest, the team that did just beat North Carolina. And I believe at this point, I'm not sure if they actually are, according to Joe Lenardi and people like that. But I believe Wake Forest should be in over North Carolina at this point after that win over the Tar Heels. But I believe they probably are really close to the bubble, if not. But I am going to say I think Wake Forest ends up not making the tournament this year. I mean, they were in this position last year, and I kind of feel similarly about them this year. I think they're barely going to miss the cut. I think they're going to be maybe a top seed in the NIT, but I don't think they are going to make the cut here this season. Next up, we do have Texas A&M, which I'm actually personally surprised that they are still considered a bubble team by most teams. I think that they should be pretty well in the tournament at like 8, 9, at lowest a 10 seed at this point. I think the Aggies have been playing outstanding in the SEC, and the SEC, in my opinion, is the second best league in college basketball, right behind the Big 12. So that should in itself get a lot of respect by the committee, with Texas A&M, playing so good in the second best league in the country. So I think that that's very impressive. They swept Auburn on the season, so that in itself, is very impressive. Facing Auburn on the road is not easy to do. So I think that that's very impressive there by A&M. And I know that they had a rough start to the year, some really bad losses, which is really the main reason and the only reason Texas A&M is not well in the tournament right now. I think actually Joe Lenardi has them just on the outside right now still, which is crazy. But I am going to say that Texas A&M does in fact make the NCAA tournament this season. Next up, why not talk about the team that Texas A&M swept, the Auburn Tigers? And Auburn, they have been struggling as of late. They have been struggling indeed. Lost at West Virginia, lost to Texas A&M at home before that. After the West Virginia game, they lost at Tennessee, and then they lost at Texas A&M. That's 4 losses right there, I think, in their last 5 games. So really went downhill there for Auburn, but I think they will turn it back around. And honestly, I've never really been that big of a fan of this Auburn team this season. I do think they are really good defensively, but I don't think they have the scoring to beat a lot of teams. So I do think Auburn will make the tournament, but given the right matchup, I don't think they're going to. I don't think they're going to get far this year. I think Auburn is a first round exit team this season. Next team, we do have the Memphis Tigers, and Memphis is interesting. I believe personally that they are going to get in. I think another team with Houston there in the AAC is definitely going to get in. They did have a hard loss to Tulane in overtime. Um, that's a tough loss in that one, but I think Memphis starts to get it turned around here late in the season. There's some good teams like Cincinnati, Temple, UCF, and the teams that Memphis can stack up some wins against. And they're going to have their opportunities. I think they still play Houston twice. I think Memphis beats Houston at least one time. And once they beat Houston, I think that is going to push Memphis into almost a guaranteed spot into March Madness this season. Next up, we do have Southern Cal University, USC, the Trojans. And the Trojans are considered a bubble team right now, but they have been playing really well as of late. So USC, I think that they've been playing really well as of late, and I know that they do play in the weakest Power Six conference in the country in the Pac-12, which is why they are considered a bubble team at this point. Like it's possible that the only two teams out of the Pac-12 that make March Madness this year are UCLA and Arizona. Like that's embarrassing for a Power Six conference to only get two teams in. I think a third team will get in, whether it's USC or another team that we will be talking about here shortly. But I think USC is the team that does get in. They've been playing really good as of late. If they keep it up and don't lose to any of these teams, that aren't very good in the Pac 12, I think that they will get in. They're going to have to get key wins over teams like Oregon, Colorado, and Utah and Arizona State. Those are the key, games there where even if they aren't able to beat teams like Arizona or UCLA, they've already beaten once, which is a key win. I think beating these teams like Colorado, Oregon, and Utah, the teams that are pretty decent, will be key to USC making March Madness. But I do think they will get in by the time we get to Selection Sunday. Next team, we do have Florida, and I'm going to be real quick with this one. Personally, I don't see, what Joe Lenardi, all these bracketologists, the committee, anyone sees in the Florida Gators this year. I think they're hot trash. I think Florida is awful, and I know they just beat Tennessee, but Tennessee loses to some bad teams. They just lost to Vanderbilt. I don't think Florida is that good. I don't think they're going to be in the March Madness tournament. I don't think they even deserve to be a bubble team at this point. I think Florida is terrible this year. They're not going to make the tournament. They're not good. Quick one there. I don't really know why they're even considered a bubble team. The fact that they're around the same spot as like teams like Texas A&M, which has been playing so good in conference play, is crazy to me. But yeah, Florida not making the tournament. No way. No way. Next team, we got about 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 teams left to talk about here. Very crazy. I'm still, kind of, you know, uh, getting through my head that Kevin Durant is heading to the Phoenix Suns. That's a huge trade. A little bit of a bonus here to this podcast if you guys are NBA fans. But back to basketball, 10 teams left, starting here with Seton Hall. And the Pirates have been playing really good as of late. And I'm very excited about Seton Hall's future because I am a huge fan of Shaheen Holloway as a coach. Watching Seton Hall, you can really tell like Shaheen Holloway is an amazing head coach because this Seton Hall team is not that great, as far as their players. It is very team based. They don't have, superstar players on this team. And I think next year when Seton Hall, Shaheen Holloway gets some of his recruits in here, hits the portal, I think the Seton Hall team, starting next year, they will be a tournament team. And after that, I think he is going to build something great there at Seton Hall. Like I could see them being, one of the top teams in the Big East for a good time coming. I'm a huge fan of him. Really, really well coached team. But I don't think they're going to make the tournament this season. As a bold, I don't really think it's bold, but as my prediction, I think Seton Hall it will miss the tournament this year. They did just lose to Creighton here today. Creighton is a hot team right now, a very talented team, and I just think this year is going to be maybe the only year in a while that Seton Hall will miss the tournament under Shaheen Holloway in his first season. And it would not surprise me if the Pirates make a very deep run in the NIT and maybe even win the NIT this season. Huge Shaheen Holloway guy right here. Huge Shaheen Holloway guy right here, but I'm going to say that they missed the tournament this season. Next up, we do have Penn State. And this prediction is a little bit biased, not because I'm a Penn State fan or anything like that. But I'm going to say Penn State does make March Madness this year, just because the main reason I'm biased is because I want to see Jalen Pickett in the tournament. He is an outstanding player. He averages 17, 8, and 8. Almost averaging a triple-double in college basketball is insane. Super fun player to watch. I want to see him in March Madness. So for those reasons alone, I'm going to say hopefully Penn State makes the tournament. I'm going to say that they get in and kind of manifest that out into existence. Next up, we do have Wisconsin, and Wisconsin still considered a bubble team, at this point, but I'm going to say Wisconsin does not make March Madness this year. I don't think they are going to be able to get in. They do have really good wins on the season. Like, they almost beat Kansas. How different would we be talking about Wisconsin if they were able to pull off that upset over Kansas early in the year? But they do have a good win over Marquette. They have a few good Big Ten wins there. But I think one of these Big Ten teams, with Wisconsin, Penn State, Northwestern, one of these teams is going to get left out, or maybe even two. I think Wisconsin is that team, and I think they're going to miss the tourney this season. Next up, we do have Nevada. And Nevada Wolfpack been playing amazing as of late. 2 key wins, both at home, coming against San Diego State and New Mexico. And they actually beat New Mexico, sweeping them on the season on the road in the pit. Not an easy place to play whatsoever. Huge win there for Nevada. I think they're well in the tournament right now, or at least they should be around a 10 seed, maybe even a 9, playing their butts off right now. Next up, we do have the Kentucky Wildcats. Been playing really good as of late. I think they are going to make the tournament. Not too much to talk about here. They were struggling there at the start of SEC play. They've gotten it turned around, and really they're only they haven't lost since the Kansas loss, and so they've been playing really well as of late. I think Kentucky's definitely going to make March Madness this year. Next up, we do have Arkansas. I think Arkansas is going to slip in the tournament, probably around like a 9 or a 10 seed, maybe even as high as an 8. I don't see Eric Musselman missing the tournament. They still have a very solid team. I think they're going to start to turn up here towards the end of the year, and Arkansas makes it in. Next up, we do have the Oregon Ducks. And Oregon is that other team I was talking about. They're either them or USC will be that third team to get in. Earlier in the season, we were kind of thinking, is it going to be Utah? Is it going to be Arizona State? That could be the third best team there in the Pac-12. But I think right now it's between USC and Oregon. I think Oregon has been playing really good as of late. And if they can, beat teams like USC, they're probably going to have to pull off an upset against someone like UCLA. They do have a really good win over Arizona already this season, which is going to go a long way if they're able to continue to win here. It would not surprise me that much if one of these teams, Oregon or maybe even a Colorado, gets a bid steal in the Pac-12 tournament and tries to win their way into March Madness. We have 2 more teams here to talk about, both coming from the Mountain West. We talked about Nevada. We got 2 more from the Mountain West. Boise State. Boise State is interesting. I think Boise State's going to get into the tournament. They've been playing good. They have a really good home atmosphere, which is really, really impressive considering they're a football school. And, the fans are showing up for the basketball team the past couple of years, really good atmosphere, and they really don't lose at home. So I think Boise's going to get in this year. And the other team is Utah State. Utah State, they have a really solid team. And it hurts me to say this, but I'm going to say Utah State is going to be that team there in the Mountain West that just does not get in this year. With San Diego State, New Mexico, Boise, Nevada, I think, that 5th team, is the Mountain West really going to get 5 teams in? I think 4 is the cutoff line, and I think Utah is that 5th team. Even though they're really good, they're going to get bounced and be in the NIT Tourney. So that is going to do it for the Bubble Watch. Let me know what you guys agree with, disagree with there, on if you think which teams you think will get in here this season. So moving on to the final portion of my podcast, or I guess not technically the final portion, but I consider this and the questions to kind of go hand in hand here for the ending. So we got my top 5 player of the year candidates, my top 3 national championship contenders, and then we will get into your guys' questions after that. And to wrap it all up, again, thank you guys. We got a lot of questions this week, so if I didn't quite get to them this week, make sure you guys ask one next Wednesday, anytime during the day. Wednesday, I record Wednesday nights, so anytime Wednesday, go over to the community tab on my YouTube channel and look for my community post asking for questions. Comment it down there, and I will be sure to look through it, and hopefully your question will be answered. But we've been getting a lot lately, so we will see. That's a good sign. That's a sign we're growing. So I appreciate you guys a ton, man. Like I said, we just hit 2.2 thousand subscribers. Very much appreciate you guys. Very much. Okay, top 5 player of the year candidates. We do have our number 1, Zach Edey, and it's been Zach Edey. This is episode 10 of the podcast. Ever since episode 1, there has not been a single episode where Zach Edey has not been number 1. He is going to win National Player of the Year. He plays for the number 1 team in the country. Still at this point, even after losing to Indiana, they're still number 1. And he is the most valuable player to his team. I mean, what would Purdue be without Zach Edey? Crazy. He's very valuable. He's the MVP. He's going to win it. He is my number 1. After that, who is in the race for second place? Well, right now I have my number 2 as Jalen Wilson, and Jalen Wilson actually only scored 2 points against Texas, and they still won. Very, very impressive there, if you ask me, and that kind of shows you how well-rounded this Kansas team is. So Jalen Wilson, I still believe he's a really good, but you can tell, maybe not as valuable as like a Zach Edey is to his team. But early, a few weeks ago, still, when Kansas was on that 3-game win streak or 3-game losing streak, Jalen Wilson was like the only one balling there, and he was keeping hope. Like Jalen Wilson, he is valuable to his team. One off night, even though they still won, I still have him up here as number 2. Number 3, I do have Brandon Miller, freshman of the year, 100%. He has been killing it. Alabama has been killing it, and Brandon Miller, I really like his game. He's the closer for this Alabama team. He's a really good shooter, efficient shooter. He's a 3-level scorer. He's a good defender. He can do everything. He can do everything, man, and he is really fun to watch. He's in here at number 3. At number 4, I do actually have Trace Jackson Davis. He's been on a tear lately, leading Indiana to wins like over Purdue. Even though Zach Edey killed him in that game, Trace Jackson Davis still had a huge game. And with Xavier Johnson being injured, hopefully they can get him back soon. TJD has been on a tear and helping them over wins over Purdue and Rutgers, 2 top teams there in the Big Ten Conference. And Indiana has been on an upwards trajectory. And once they get Xavier Johnson back, it is looking pretty good. Also, shout out to Jalen Hood-Schifino. He has been a big part of closing out these games and has been a closer for the Hoosiers. Really good freshman there for Indiana. Number 5, we do have Drew Timme, and I know Gonzaga just lost to St. Mary's, but St. Mary's is a really good team. That game went to overtime. Gonzaga actually played that better than I thought they would. So going into it, I thought St. Mary's is going to win by almost 10 points. So still, I think Drew Timme has been carrying this Gonzaga team throughout the year. He's been playing amazing, and I still have him as number 5 here on this list. Honorable mentions, I do have 2. Azuolas Tubelis. He dropped the 40-point game last week. I could honestly put him in at 5, 4, 3, or even 2. That just goes to show you, after Zach Edey, they're all kind of pretty close and can be swapped around, week after week. But Tubelis gets an honorable mention this week. And also honorable mention to a guy that I mentioned earlier I want to see in the tournament really bad, Jalen Pickett. Jalen Pickett is an amazing player, and I don't think Penn State just has had the success this season for him to even be in the conversation, but he definitely deserves an honorable mention here on one of these podcasts because he has been playing amazing. So that's going to do it for my top, really my top 7 player of the year candidates, since I did have some honorable mentions. So top 3 national championship contenders for this week. My number one, I don't know if this was my number one last week, but the last few days I've been feeling this one ever since they beat Temple on Sunday, and I watched how they played in that second half. My number one championship contender has been the Houston Cougars, and Houston looked really good in the second half against Temple. When I was watching them play, I was like, hold up, wait a minute, okay, this Houston team, in the college, when all the college basketball, a lot of these top teams are losing, Houston looked like a national championship level team, and they have a really interesting team. It's almost like an NBA style team. And I think Kelvin Sampson is a brilliant head coach, man, because the way this team plays, they're so scrappy and so defensively good and intelligent, which is a Kelvin Sampson team, right? Kelvin Sampson's teams are gritty, are tough, are very good defensively, and force a lot of turnovers. And they have that. But with Jamal Sheed and Marcus Sasser being really good drivers at the point guard position and can shoot around them, almost everyone, not only are they good defensively, but they are 3 and D players. They can all shoot the rock and they can all play defense with the best of them. That's why I think like they are all like they're kind of like an NBA style team. Like they're all 3 and D players, including the freshman Jarris Walker, who has been killing it lately, ever since, the start of January or so. This guy has been killing it. He's making like 3-4 threes a game at the power forward position, a really good stretch big that you can play at the 5 position and play 5 out on the 3-point line. Insane. Huge fan of this Houston team. I think Kelvin Sampson is an amazing head coach. Amazing head coach. And I'm a big Kelvin Sampson guy. And right now I'm a big Houston guy as far as who I'm thinking about picking in my brackets. So number 2, you guys are going to be annoyed at me probably, but I do have the UConn Huskies. If you guys watch my bracket predictions, I'm high on UConn, but after that win over Marquette, I'm getting a little bit high on them again. They looked like the team that I think that they can be against Marquette. And I'm excited about it. I'm excited to watch them against Creighton this Saturday, and we will have a new bracket predictions video out next week, since it will be 2 weeks since my last one. And we'll see, if they do beat Creighton, that's going to show me a lot about this UConn team. At number 3, I do have Purdue. Purdue, I don't know if they can win the championship this year. They seem to never be able to get the job done. But we have seen teams recently, like Virginia in 2019, like Baylor in 2021, teams that have never won the national championship before, win it all with really good coaches and Scott Drew and Tony Bennett. Guys, those coaches have built their programs up, and that's similar to what a Matt Painter has been able to do there at Purdue. So the more I think about it, I think, Purdue, yeah, they don't get far in the tournament. They choke sometimes, but Matt Painter has been right there, a couple of times, and this could be his year. This could be his year. I mean, Zach Edey is a dominant force, one of the most dominant forces I've seen in college basketball, and this could be his year. So I have Purdue here at number 3. So let's get into the final portion of this podcast. We have a lot of questions to get to. I didn't get to them all, like I said. We had a lot, but we do have, I think, 6. I think I picked out my favorite 6 questions here to answer for you guys today, and we're starting to run out of time here today, so we're going to get right into them. Or I have 5 questions. I picked my favorite 5 questions. So our first question is coming in here from Brady, and he says, "Do I think Virginia can win it all this season?" Now, this is a good question. I think Virginia can win it all this year. I think it's pretty wide open, but if they have to get matched up against teams like Houston, I think or even a Purdue, I don't think Virginia beats Houston or Purdue this season, or even a UConn. So I'm actually maybe gonna say no to this question. I think it's possible. I think they're going to need to upset one of these teams. And I also think that, if they have to play them back to back, say they have to play Purdue in the Final Four and they get past them, and then they have to play Houston in the championship, I don't think they can win both of those games. So I'm going to say no. Actually, I think it's possible, but I think a slim chance. I think that they can get to the Final Four, but I'm getting Elite Eight vibes. I'm getting Elite Eight vibes from this year's Virginia team. Next up, we have one coming in here from Paul, and he asked, "Is UConn back?" So we kind of been talking about UConn for, a little bit during this podcast. So I'm going to keep this brief, but I think this win is a statement win here for UConn. They look like the team we saw earlier in the season. The beat up on Alabama and won the early season tournament. I believe, was it the Phil Knight Legacy tournament? Yeah, UConn, they might be back. I think this Saturday against Creighton is really going to tell us a lot about this UConn team, though. So that's really going to be the big game there. Next up, we have one coming in here by Alex, and he asked, "Who would my top coach of the year candidates be for each of the Power Six conferences?" So we'll start off with the Big 12. My top coach of the year candidate for the Big 12 would be Kansas State's coach Jerome Tang. No doubter there. Kansas State was projected to finish last in the Big 12, and now they're projected to be a top 5 seed in the tournament. For the Big Ten, it's also really easy for me. I would say Matt Painter. Talked about him earlier. Could it possibly be his year this year? I think Matt Painter is an excellent coach. And let's not forget, Purdue is not projected to be this good. I think a lot of people start to think, like, whenever they're going for coach of the year, and who should win it, they're kind of like, this team, UConn wasn't projected to be this good. Kansas State wasn't projected to be this good, but Purdue really wasn't projected to be, a top 10 level team, and especially not to be the number 1 team for this long in the season. So I think Matt Painter definitely deserves a Big Ten Coach of the Year. As far as ACC Coach of the Year, that is an interesting one. That is a very interesting one there. I might have to get back to that one and think about ACC Coach of the Year here a little bit. We will move on to SEC Coach of the Year. SEC Coach of the Year, I think, is another no-brainer. I got to go with Nate Oates. Nate Oates has been killing it this season, and with the way he's developed those freshmen, not only Brandon Miller, but Jaden Bradley and Noah Clowney, I think I think he deserves it 100%. Nate Oates, Coach of the Year in the SEC. Next up, we do have the Pac-12. The Pac-12 is another pretty interesting one there, man. A pretty interesting one there. I think it has to go probably to Nick Cronin there, or Tommy Lloyd. I think those are the only 2 coaches you can really give it to, and I'm gonna go with Tommy Lloyd here on this one. I know he, won it last year and all that, but he deserves it. He deserves it for what he's doing, building up that Arizona program, and they did beat UCLA this year, so I'm gonna go ahead and say Tommy Lloyd for that one. So we have two more. I thought about the ACC one here a little bit, and I'm actually going to go with NC State's coach, Kevin Keatts. Kevin Keatts, I think he deserves it. No one expected NC State to be that good this year, or to be a tournament level team. And NC State's looking really good as of late, and they're actually on a pretty good win streak. So I think he deserves it, especially because Virginia and Miami, they're having a little bit of struggles recently, and I think we expected those teams to be good. Whereas NC State, we didn't expect to be this level of good. And my last one, we do have Big East Coach of the Year. Very much multiple guys you could give it to here. I think you could give it to, this is probably the closest race out of any conference here, is the Big East Coach of the Year. And you could give it to Shaka Smart. You could give it to Dan Hurley. You could give it to one of my favorite coaches in all of college basketball, Ed Cooley. You could give it to Sean Miller, who is back for his first year back with his second stint there. If I had to pick anyone to give it to at this point, I would probably say Sean Miller. I think Sean Miller deserves it. Coming back with his second stint there at Xavier, I think he deserves it, and they've been playing really good. I know they lost to DePaul, and they have not, had a couple bumps in the road here, but I think they get back on track to end of the year, and I'll go with Sean Miller to get it. Next question coming in here from Gary or Gavin, not sure. But he asked, do you think there will be a big upset this year, like a 16 over a 1? And honestly, depends on what seed Tennessee is, because if Tennessee is a 1 seed, I could see it. But I don't think Tennessee will be a 1 seed. I don't think we'll see a 16 over a 1 this season. And I don't think we're going to see a 15 over a 2 this season. I think we've been getting a little bit spoiled. I've been saying this. I think we've been getting a little bit spoiled with the 15 over 2s the last couple of seasons. But I do believe, I'm almost 100% sure we will see 14 over a 3 and at least 13 over a 4 this season. So those are the type of upsets I'm thinking we're going to see this year. And last question, but certainly not least of the podcast, we have one coming here from my man, basketball and football guy, and he asked, what mid-major team will make a run in March Madness? So it's always good to talk about the mid-majors a little bit. Obviously, the best mid-major right now is St. Mary's. They look really, really good right now, and I think that they are maybe a Sweet 16 team. It's looking like they could get pretty easily to the Sweet 16 there. But not counting them, because I think that that's kind of an easy out for this question. Which mid-major team do I think could make a run? How about the Marshall Thundering Herd? If they can win their conference, sneak into the tournament, this team is very fun to watch. I think could possibly get a win or two. So there's a lot of really good mid-majors out there, like FAU, Charleston, Nevada, Boise State, San Diego State, really good mid-major teams that you would say are at the top. Oral Roberts, even I'll mention in there. Kent State, Toledo, Akron, whoever comes out of the MAC conference there. But let's throw a little bit of bias in there by me, and also kind of like a pick that you guys probably weren't expecting. And let's go with the Marshall Thundering Herd, because they are a really good team this year, and I really hope they're able to make the March Madness tournament. I think with the right matchups, they could maybe make a little bit of a run. So that is going to do it for today's episode of the Danny Hoops podcast, episode 10. We've been getting a lot of support on the podcast lately, so I appreciate you guys, everybody who watches or listens to these and enjoys them. So thank you guys so much, and we will be live tonight. If you guys are watching this on Thursday, we'll be live tonight on YouTube at around 9 p.m. watching some games, talking some basketball. I'm going to be getting crazy, I'm sure. So make sure you guys come tune in and talk some college hoops with me on the live. So thank you guys for watching. Subscribe if you guys are new. And yeah, guys, I'm out.